Incels are portrayed as the monsters of society, yet women are most likely to be murdered by their husbands, a sex haver who they selected. In fact, the most common popular tropes of male threats to women are those who are respected and popular who either deceived them as to who they really were by suddenly assaulting them out of the blue in what seemed out of character or leveraging their power dynamics over her in some way. The father figure, the teacher, the boyfriend, the frat bro, that one guy in the friend group, the boss at work, the priest. Hell, Me Too was almost all about men in the highest positions of power in Hollywood that set up casting couches or took advantage of their co-stars, often less star power, or assaulted lower status random women they might have had flings with. Yet despite this, now more than ever, virgin men are growingly the most vilified meta-category of men, almost entirely being young men who BTW have yet to do anything with their lives, good or bad. This largely lies at the hands of modern spins on slave morality, where they hold the sincere belief that women are morally superior, largely in part because of their physical weakness. That men are evil because of the power they hold, and are therefore able to execute their desires with. And that moral attacks on men are not only a reasonable recourse, but one of the few available to virtuous weak women. SJW men, an older generation, traditional men, largely reinforce this because of liberal oppressor versus oppressed systemizing and because of benevolent sexism, along with older men's self-interest in maintaining their superior status to young men in relationships and respect. I'm not part of this young generation that rapes less, murders less, enforces less, legal, racial, gender, sexual orientation discrimination, engages in less drug-induced degeneracy. No, I'm one of the good men. Why? Because I have sex and money. Doesn't it say that somewhere in the Bible? Because of these women's allies, they don't look to attack the men with power who parrot their agenda outside of their momentary social media outrages. Where is the never-ending women's crusade against the Epstein Island visitors? No, they attack the men with the least power in society. They will on one hand say that rape is about power, yet on the other hand go after those with the least power. They will accept that the modern nobility of capitalism who are already rich don't stop wanting to be rich. That politicians that have secured their place in government don't want to stop gaining political power. That those who have the most largely want more, but then that narrative is suddenly broken when it comes to sex. Why don't all young men just become monks? Why don't we all crash the birth rate? Why don't you accept degeneracy abound? The men with power get to live their lives like Saudi princes and treat women like porta potties, while at the same time watching the ire fall on not just men in general, but the very same men who never even interacted with these women sexually and are KHHV. Then they watch as the discourse transforms into men. Aren't you tired of the gender war stuff? Ugh, this made-up divide is just so they can ignore class stuff and the government's plots. They throw the stones, hide their hands, complain of the stone throwing, belittle the men that got hit by the stones, and in the end, still pretend to be most mindful of higher things than these petty affairs of small-minded incels. This world is a rotten heap of shit that is currently afforded the luxury of having the men of the highest moral character than virtually any time in human history. Yet it is more popular now than any time in human history to degrade, disparage, and wish for the death of these men. To speak of the horrible nature of the modern man, or how dating prospects are so much worse nowadays. Prostitution was a fundamental norm for most of human history. It's been relegated to something unspoken and the fringes of society, so much so that this progress is taken for granted now. A live-in sex slave was a commonality for a family with a bit of means. Should men today beat women more, burn them as witches more, rape them more, kill them more, enslave them more, to get back to the virtuous character of the past? Grant them less freedom, less education, less work opportunity, less of a right to speak? Will young men then finally be less despised than the men of the past? Less despised than their grandpa who always loved to throw out slurs and beat up grandma now and then, but who made sure to pull out her chair on date night? How are we supposed to reach the boys? Maybe start to acknowledge this degenerate culture you handed down that is lacking all morals and that no boy wants to perpetuate. If there is a war, there we will not respond like in Ukraine. Men will rightfully flee, no questions asked en masse.